Vintage Sand.
Hello, hello, hello. Here we are. We're still in quarantine. We're still locked away with nothing to do but watch movies. You'd think it would be heaven, but actually it has. Well, John got a haircut. Good for
It
you.
would be that. It would be our choice anyway. So
Yeah, exactly. So no big change for us. I think we've adapted very well to the quarantine. So yeah, John at least went out and got a haircut. I'm proud of him. But yes, it is.
and I must admit that when I went, and I was only there for maybe at the most 40 minutes, I was terrified the entire time.
The hell out
I had
of
my
here.
mask on, he had a mask on, and also he told me about the fact that he gets tested regularly because he has diabetes.
Oh, fine.
Dear.
Thank you. All right. So, battered but unbroken, we are Team Vintage Sand. Michael Edmond, John Meyer, and your humble narrator, Josh Cabot. And for our 22nd episode, my God, it's been an epic run, hasn't it? I thought we were going to close in Philadelphia, and yet here we are. And
You just never know what the public likes.
and it's not a coincidence that our very first episode, way back, I believe it was in April of 18, was called Hitchcock Obscura, where we talked about our favorite obscure Hitchcock films, if there is such a thing, someone who studied maybe more than any other director. And I recall that Michael settled on Stage Fright, with its lying flashback, which I love, and John settled on The Wrong Man, which is as unsettling as a film as you'll ever see, and I settled on I Confess. And then in episode 5, we returned to Hitchcock for our favorite Hitchcock moments. You should, no need to recap here, but you should definitely go back and listen to episode 5. It's worthwhile. And we've wandered and we've strayed and we've gone hither, thither, and yon, and all the way back and all the way forward. And now here we are. And we find ourselves in episode 22, back to Hitchcock, for an episode that we've been threatening to do for a long time, right, fellas? It's our, I think we threatened this back in episode 5. It's our episode on our favorite Hitchcock villains, and there's definitely a type to that. How would you describe, and there are always exceptions, of course, how would you guys describe the typical Hitchcock?
And some of my favorite are exceptions, but
yes.
the quintessential Hitchcock villain is this suave, smooth, very cultured man who can be very, very charming, but will do what's villainous to get what he wants.
Right, and it's not like, I've often compared Hitchcock to James Bond in saying that often the films will rise and fall based upon how good their villain is. And I don't know if that's really necessarily true looking at all of Hitchcock's career, but, there's never any gleeful hand-rubbing global domination.
No, not at all.
No. White cat in the lap, Ernst Stavro Blofeld kind of thing.
They're always very real.
Well, and we talked in the earlier episode about the whole MacGuffin idea, and the fact is that in the Bond films, the MacGuffin is shown all the time. We've got to stop this nuclear bomb before it explodes, or before Goldfinger makes all the gold in Fort Knox radioactive, or whatever.
And it's usually the same bomb.
Yes, and they keep reusing that same, saves on prop money.
Same bomb.
And with Hitchcock, it's never what's happened. Like, for example, think about, one of the best fits for your description, John, is James Mason as Van Damme in North by Northwest. And, we never really find out what there's a secret. There's a microfilm. It's in but we don't even know what's on the microfilm.
That's an interesting one. That's one of my favorites, partly because James Mason, even though he's only in the movie in key moments, he's really excellent, and he's so suave, and you get the sense of a very cultured man with varied interests, some of the references he throws out, but at the same time, he just turns completely evil in a moment. I mean, at the last part, when he finds out about Eva Marie Saint, that the quote he has, he says, and Leonard says, "You're not taking her on the plane, will you?"
Oh, right.
He says, "Of course I am. Like our friends, I too believe in neatness, Leonard. This matter is best disposed of from a great height over water."
Exactly. Whoa. And
it's like, oh my God.
And I love the sort of openly gay subtext for 1959. And I give Hitchcock and Ernest Lehman credit for that.
Well, actually, it was Martin Landau claims it was his idea, that it was not in the original script.
I believe that, and there are very few interesting henchmen, whereas Bond, there's always hundreds of henchmen to get rid of. But
and also, and supposedly, according to one of the biographies I read, the whole thing where Mason slugs Landau, and you look at that, and it's the one time where his veneer is gone.
Yes.
He's really mad, and that was supposedly Mason's idea.
Really?
To hit him. Because none of that was in the original Ernest Leham Hitchcock script.
Interesting.
The gay
not only that, but I think the reason he's so mad isn't because he cares about the Eva Marie Saint character. He's insulted because what Leonard is saying to you, you're a dumbass.
Yeah, you're a dumbass, and I also suspect that he knows that Leonard has a thing for him, and that also probably freaks him out.
Well,
it is amazing thinking Mason was a big star at this time, and he has top billing, and he's only in the movie 16 minutes.
Yeah,
that's right. Very, very. I mean, his moments are very memorable, but he's not in it that much.
I mean, the first 90 minutes, he's in it for 4. The brief scene in the beginning, and then he doesn't pop up really until the auction. He's got like 30 seconds.
I love that scene. I love that moment.
Love the auction scene. It feels like a part that could have been played by anybody, but the fact that Mason is the one who brings some life to it.
Absolutely.
He makes that character interesting. A lesser actor could have served the part fine and moved the plot forward, but we're interested in Van Damme because of Mason.
I cannot imagine another actor in that part, but then I can't imagine anybody else in that. I mean, to me, North by Northwest is such a perfect movie. And it's also the longest running time of any Hitchcock movie.
Yeah.
I'm not quite as big a fan of it as you guys are, but to me, it's a series of really unbelievable set pieces looking for a movie.
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely has a motion. I mean, a geographic motion, as in the title, and there's no let up in between, but. There are so many great scenes, but it doesn't have a flow to me of something like Vertigo or Rear Window or Strangers on a Train.
Well, the flow, the real flow, the theme is about breaking down the Cary Grant character. I mean, it's basically trial by fire.
Right.
You put him through all these different trials, and he eventually becomes a more authentic person by the end.
And I have to say, and even the climactic scene at the at Mount Rushmore, I was like, okay, but now he's starting to rob his own bag of tricks because he hung Norman Lloyd off the Statue of Liberty in Saboteur back in.
You could say that about Hitchcock in all his movies. He always sort of borrowed from himself a little bit.
Well, but then after North by Northwest goes into completely different territory with Psycho and Birds.
Yeah.
And, Vertigo was not like anything, and neither was Rear Window in some ways. But yeah, if it was derivative, it was only derivative of himself, and you can't penalize someone for that.
No,
I never even thought of the North by Northwest as being derivative. I mean, as I said, I just think, and I think it was Hitchcock's biggest financial success.
Absolutely,
up to that point. I think Psycho actually wound up making more money.
And certainly more profit. Psycho must have cost a lot less.
That's it. Yeah, that's also.
But the color is beautiful, and the Herman music is great, and the Saul Bass titles. I mean, everything. All cylinders are firing in North by Northwest.
Oh yeah. Yes, it's a really beautiful, very high tech, big production, and then the contrast of going to Psycho, which is such a minimalist. Small movie that he shot in about a month with a
TV crew.
Yeah. And part of the reason he did that was because Hitchcock wanted to say, you can make a good movie for cheap.
Yeah.
All these big productions are coming out. They're not very good.
I mean, and the thing, when I walk away from North by Northwest, as much as I love James Mason, the thing I love most about the film is Eva Marie Saint. I mean,
she's wonderful.
Absolutely, Michael.
It's my favorite Eva Marie Saint performance.
She is just every minute of hers is believable.
Yeah.
And Cary Grant is playing Cary Grant brilliantly.
Yeah, well, I tell people if they want to see one perfect Cary Grant performance where he shows all facets of a Cary Grant character, that's the movie.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so Mason is a great place to start it with North by Northwest. Let's move a little bit into, we're not doing our usual, top 5 list because we didn't feel that really applied here. How about your great villains who are a little bit or a whole bunch deranged or, out of their senses? And we're holding off on Norman Bates. That's going to be our exit question.
See,
because,
I would, deranged, I would go Bruno Anthony.
Absolutely. Who is, I think I'm going to guess that if we did make a list, we'd all have the same number 1, but Bruno is my second.
No. You'd be surprised at my number 1.
Interesting. Okay. I have a feeling I know who your number 1 would be.
I think I know who your number 1 is too, but I'm going to hold off and
okay.
up on that for a minute. But the one that sort of fits in with Bruno is Uncle Charlie. Is Joseph Cotton's performance in Shadow of a Doubt.
It's really interesting because I know you like Strangers on a Train a lot. I'm not crazy about it, mainly because of Farley Granger. I think he really hurts the movie.
I agree.
But the thing is that more so than most Hitchcock movies, the villain, Robert Walker, he doesn't just steal the movie. He puts it in his pocket and walks away.
Yeah, it's his movie.
It is absolutely.
It really is. It is definitely his movie, and he's excellent in it.
You shouldn't have done that, guy. Oh my God.
But some of the moments too. But like, for example, when you see, first of all, there's that great murder scene. The shot of the glasses, and oh God, that's so good. But then when you see him and he does a little thing where he pops the kid's balloon, and then you see him walk a blind person across the street. And it's like,
no, and when he
there's no conscience at all.
When he reenacts the murder with his, with the judge's wife, and then looks up and sees Cat Hitchcock, sees Babs, and before he realizes what he's doing, is starting to actually strangle her.
Right.
Well, and of course, even the casual Hitchcock fan will know that Robert Walker had made his career for the 5 years before that, playing, sweet, young, naive, lovely, with opposite Judy Garland, and See Here, Private Hargrove, and stuff like that. And
he was in all these World War II movies where he's always sort of the naive kid, kind of learning things.
Right, sweet, naive kid, the hero, and then I don't know what Hitchcock saw in him. I don't know what possessed him to say that's our Bruno, but
he was an alcoholic.
Yeah, and that was his last full film.
Right? Yeah.
Although in Sea of Grass, he's not such a nice guy.
I've never
not a good movie. Not a good movie, but
which one?
Sea of Grass.
I've never seen it.
That's the Hepburn Tracy that Elia Kazan directed.
Yeah.
I think it's the worst Hepburn Tracy.
You might be right about that.
Yeah, I've never been able to get through the whole thing.
But what I love about Bruno is that, as clearly insane as he is, there is a method to his madness. There is a clock-like precise logic to everything he does. So you like my ideas? Oh, sure, Bruno. They're all great ideas. They're all wonderful. And when you get to meet his mother and briefly meet his father, very briefly, you can sort of understand how Bruno became Bruno.
Yes. Yeah.
That's one of my favorite moments in the film is when he sees the painting that she's done and he's like, oh my God, you got him. That's him. That's father. And she's like, really? I thought it was St. Anthony.
I love that actress, Marion Lauren.
Oh, she's wonderful.
She's so good. And she didn't do that many different things.
And he's sort of, I love my villains without background. We've talked before about why I love, say, Heath Ledger's Joker as opposed to the Joaquin Phoenix Jokers, because I don't really want a backstory for my bad guys. That's why Iago in Othello is so terrifying, is because you don't know his backstory. There is no reason, no easy, simple, straightforward, there's the problem, reason. He is just chaos and evil, and that's Bruno. You bump into the wrong guy's feet on the train and bam, there goes your life. So an unusual, and I know you guys don't love Shadow of a Doubt as much as I do, but
you're going to really disagree with me on this one. I really don't care for Joseph Cotton in it.
That's what I say too. I think Cotton really throws. I mean Joseph Cotton sometimes was very good, But I think that movie would have been really terrifying, really interesting if someone like Cary Grant had played that part. Where
Or,
you really could have believed that this very, very charming man is the one who's able to charm these, lonely widows into getting what he wants. Where the Joseph Cotton, it's like, okay, I know right away this guy's a sleaze.
Yeah.
but we
And I like everyone else in it. I think Teresa Wright's wonderful.
Yes, but we see him we know he's the bad guy. There's no mystery. We see him running from the cops, and
yeah.
But you can't figure out how nobody else can see that he's a bad guy except for Charlie, and that takes a while.
But I believe the scene in the bar where he says, how you're in your little bubble here and you don't see that the world is a sty. And I believe him in that little monologue he gives about the widows, their wives, their silly wives.
But the way he plays it, he twirls.
A little heavy-handed.
He's so heavy-handed in it.
Yeah.
How about like a Robert Mitchum or someone in that? Would that have been too obvious too?
That would have been, no, it should have been somebody who was just so full of charm.
That's why I say Cary Grant.
Cary Grant would have been wonderful. He wouldn't have done it, but he would have been.
No, he never would have done it.
No, well, look what happens in we think he's that character in Suspicion, and they pull back away from that at the very end. Yeah. Sorry, spoiler alert.
But Hitchcock was forced to do that.
Yeah,
I think originally he thought he was going to be able to.
Yeah.
That's a film that's worth it just for one glowing glass of milk coming up the stairs.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
There are good scenes in it, and then that last few minutes, becomes a different
I've only seen that movie once because I was so bitterly disappointed by the ending.
I'm gonna gently disagree with you guys. I love Uncle Charlie. I agree with you that you might have found a better actor than Joseph Cotton, but I believe him. I believe in his charm enough, and in the naivete of Teresa Wright and her family to not.
She was marvelous in it.
Oh, and all we talked about this before, that all the characters.
Oh, Patricia Collins is wonderful in it.
Yeah, she's really good.
And Henry Travers and Hume Cronin.
Yeah, Kirby.
Everybody else is wonderful. It's just him.
Well, but then you also had that tacked on. I don't know. I just don't believe the love interest with McDonald Carey and
but now you're getting away from the subject. I mean, he's terrible, and it's totally tacked on. But
because it's just kind of I remember the first time I saw it, when it got to that part, I was like, huh?
But he sort of, just as Bruno sort of embodies chaos. You could do a whole, just as you could with Strangers on a Train. And I think Strangers on a Train and Shadow of a Doubt make a good pair because it's about the two sides of us. It's about the two Charlies, Teresa Wright and Joseph Cotton. And it's about Bruno and Guy being almost alter egos, two halves of a whole in Strangers on a Train. So I think those two belong nicely together.
It's
Crisscross. Oh, sure, Bruno. I like all your ideas. Wonderful. So
that's a common theme in Hitchcock, the whole idea of duality.
Right, and the shared guilt and the Catholic thing. Absolutely, John. Absolutely. Yeah. So far we've got James Mason, Robert Walker, and I'm putting in Joseph Cotton over Mike's and John's strenuous objections. I'm going to take a shot in the dark at a film we haven't mentioned, I don't think, ever in our episodes. Michael, I'm going to be betting your number one was a former tennis player.
Yeah.
There you go. That would be Tony Wendis. Yes.
A little bit of background. John knows this. I actually met the writer, Frederick Knott, of Dial M for Murder, and he basically only wrote 3 plays, and he lived off the income of that. Wait Until Dark, and then another play, A Talent for Murder, which wasn't a big hit. But when I was taking acting classes, and this was 37 years ago, this older lady in our class that nobody wanted to work with, and I said, let's do The Lion in Winter. So I met her at her apartment, and there's this big picture of Hitchcock, and I had no idea she was married to Frederick Knott.
Oh my goodness!
And we talked a little bit, and I just said, I love Dial M for Murder, and I love Hitchcock. And he told me that he did, and I didn't know much about it. I mean, I'd seen it a couple of times. And I didn't know that Hitchcock basically really did work on all the screenplays with whoever was credited with writing it.
And also Alma, his wife, too.
And she didn't work on that one, I don't think. By the 50s, I think she more or less took a back seat. I think Stage Fright was her last. I mean, I think he would go to Alma
right.
stuff for advice.
So why is Tony Wendis your number one Hitchcock?
Well, think about it. How many, at least, I don't know, maybe there's some British ones, but how many Hitchcock movies has the villain in all but 12 minutes of the movie?
Oh, yeah, he's the star of the movie.
He is the star.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you can't say that about Strangers on a Train because half the movie is Farley Granger stinking up the screen.
Well, I can say the same about Robert Cummings, Michael.
Yes. But Robert Cummings is the only, I mean, if Tony Wendis has a opponent, it's not Robert Cummings, it's John Williams.
Right, who's wonderful. John Williams.
Yes. John Williams won the Tony Award for doing that on Broadway, and he was not a big film actor. Afterwards, after he did Dial M for Murder, then he got a lot of film roles. But before that, he was mainly a stage actor. I looked him up in IMDb, and there's not a lot.
No, and he achieved something. Obviously, we don't want poor Grace Kelly to die, but yet we're also sort of rooting for him.
We are. Kind of.
Kind of. And you'd have to
I mean, I think Ray Milland is excellent in it. I agree with you that he really, it's one of the few times where the villain is the star. I don't care for the movie, though. I think it's
very
stagey. I think it's minor Hitchcock.
Okay. But I still enjoy it. I've had the advantage.
It's kind of stagey, which is unusual.
Although if you see the 3D, you might like it a little more if you ever see it in 3D. And Film Forum used to have it once a year.
Right, Film Forums has that projector that'll have that.
There's only 2 projectors in the whole country.
I'm kind of between you guys on the film. I like it. I'll watch it every time it's on. But yeah, it is like Rope. It is extremely stagey. It really feels like a film play. But again, I agree with Michael in that what makes it watchable is Ray Milland. I mean, he just brings.
Oh yeah.
And I also saw a remake. Well, there's 2 remakes. There's one that's with Michael Douglas and Gwyneth Paltrow called The Perfect Murder.
And Viggo Mortensen is the character. Yeah,
it really veers off the script. I mean, it's very, very different. But then there was a TV version in the early '80s with Christopher Plummer, Angie Dickinson, Michael Parks, Anthony Quayle as the inspector, and Ron Moody as the murderer.
Oh, as the captain.
As the captain, yeah. And it's not good. It's just. I'm sorry, Mr. Knott. It's not that good a play.
No, it puts the knot in not good.
Yeah, it really is.
Ouch.
And just watching it, I'm thinking, God, Hitchcock just adds so much just in casting. It's shorter. The Dial M for Murder is shorter. The Hitchcock version is shorter than the actual play. I think it's like a half hour.
And it's certainly nice to see. It's the first time I ever remember seeing Grace Kelly, and I, taken aback by how beautiful she is, and
she makes that character. She makes that character sympathetic. I mean, Grace Kelly, Angie Dickinson. Just think of the difference.
Oh, what a falling off was there, as Shakespeare says.
Yeah.
Exactly. How far we've fallen.
And it's funny. So I've been a bigger fan of the Hitchcock movie ever since I saw that remake. And I feel the same way about Rope because I had the misfortune of seeing the play of Rope. And it's terrible. And
yeah,
I like the movie. I know the whole experiment with the long take, but with one exception, I think the movie is actually very well acted. And
yes, I would agree. I would agree with that. Yeah.
Wait, I thought you didn't like John Dahl either. I know you don't like.
No, I think John Dahl is actually pretty good in it.
And Stewart is.
I think Stewart's excellent in it.
A little overwritten, but
I've always been curious if Stewart knew that was a gay character. Because in the play, it's definitely it's
very clear. Yeah,
it's very clear.
it's clear that that the relationship between John Dahl and Farley Granger.
Oh yeah, and it's funny because I read Arthur Lawrence, who wrote the screenplay. I read his autobiography, and at the time, Lawrence was having an affair with Farley Granger.
Oh my!
And Hitchcock knew all about it. Hitchcock was fascinated by him.
Yeah, he was fascinated with anything to do with sexual, either intensity or deviance, especially.
And you do know that both Cary Grant and Montgomery Clift turned down roles in that movie.
In Rope?
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. And by deviance, I mean to say deviance as it was in 1948.
Yeah, but I think they just recognized themselves. Although John Dahl, who didn't have a long career in acting, didn't have a long career in life, I think he died at 50, he was gay.
I did not. Well, I mean, there's the other film he's known for and is even better in is Gun Crazy. And
I just finally saw that 2 weeks
Gun
ago.
Crazy.
I liked Gun Crazy. I really liked her.
Peggy
Cummins, she's excellent.
Whatever happened?
She is good.
She's excellent.
I'm sorry she didn't have more of a career.
So in summation,
I have a go in a different direction where villains who are more human, more the.
There's only one at the top of the list. There's only one it could be.
Well, there's a couple that I definitely think of, two that I think of all the time that are more of the lower class villains that out of desperation are doing what they're, and that's Lars Thorwald and Carl Verloc, Sabotage.
It's amazing how little time we see Raymond Burr, and Michael always says this when we talk about Rear Window, how well we seem to know that guy, whether it's the way it's shot or it's Raymond Burr. There is a real pathos to this, this guy who's just like,
a full character, and you don't really see him up close and see him really speak lines until the very end of the movie. Right.
What do you want? Do you want money? I don't have money. I mean, he's a schmo. And instead of feeling hate for him, like, oh my God, you killed your wife in cold blood and cut her body parts up and took him out in your sales case. But you're like, I kind of feel sorry for this guy.
Until he starts to push James Stewart out the window.
Yeah, well.
Then you're like, ooh.
It's a little rough. And Sabotage it's one of my favorite moments in all of Hitchcock when he kind of just allows Sylvia Sidney to kill. He basically walks right into the knife.
Yeah, you're not, and the way it's shot, you're not sure is he purposely like walking into her, or does she thrust the knife, or is it a little of both? You really don't know. I think it's a little of
both, but he,
don't know. But it's the way it's shot too, and then that shot afterwards, you see her walking out, and you just see the feet on the floor. But what really, I mean, he's involved with what he is because he needs money, whatever. You don't know all the details as to why he's doing what he's doing, because he's not politically motivated.
Wait, I thought he was
with these terrorists.
Yeah, right.
Sabotage. But after the boy is killed on the bus, and I watched it again recently, I forgot how emotionally wrenching the movie is.
God,
you have it?
Oh. No. I watched it on Amazon.
Oh, okay.
And we know.
Actually, if you have Amazon Prime, it's free.
Okay, great.
Fabulous. And we know
but the thing is that after that happens, and Sylvia Sidney finds out that he is the one responsible for, having him carry the bomb and get on the bus and everything, he sort of dismisses it.
Yeah.
His behavior is sort of like, I just broke a glass in the kitchen. It's okay. We can just sweep up the glass. And
well, doesn't he say at one point, how would you have felt if I had the bomb or something like that?
So but it's like, oh my God.
He kind of throws it away.
He's completely evil.
and Sylvia Sidney is such a good actress and makes.
She's excellent in it.
And her revenge is so. Just God, but that scene, and for those of you who haven't seen Sabotage, and that's a lot of you, it's from 1936, and the scene is the nest of spies is being spied on, so they can't get out. So Sylvia Sidney is the wife, her little brother lives with him, so they give the package to the little boy. He's supposed to leave it on the steps of the courthouse, I think, at 2:00, but then he gets distracted by there's a street fair or something, right?
Yeah, and also
and-
there's the part too where the street vendor that uses to demonstrate him toothpaste and everything, all these little things, and he's such a likable, sweet boy.
And you're sitting there going, kid, come on, you got a bomb in there. And, it's but usually 99 times out of 100, something will stop the bomb from going off. And
This time it didn't.
Right. And I believe Hitchcock regretted that.
He did.
Yeah.
He talks about it in the Truffaut book. He said it didn't work.
Well, if we're going back to the British films, I'm throwing Paul Lucas in there from.
He's on my honorable mention list.
Yep. Absolutely, because he's a masterful suave villain. Very, he's a doctor, so he's respected, and he, it takes us a while. It takes the nun in high heels for us to figure out that he's a bad guy.
Yeah.
But I mean, where I thought you were going with this, John, was that if we were making in a top 5, I think everybody's number one, just because of the part and because of the actor, has to be Claude Rains.
Yeah.
Oh, most definitely.
Claude Rains.
Claude Rains, that is my favorite Hitchcock villain, partly because it's Claude Rains. He's so great in it.
It's one of the great performances of ever, I think, on film.
Yes, he's so good in it.
Totally believable.
But also, he's a very human, suave, cultured villain. You see vulnerability in him. And
Totally.
because of the structure of the movie, the Cary Grant character who can't express his love, but the Claude Rains character can. He's so likable.
I mean, I was watching it last night, and I thought, it's too bad. I was watching the scene in the restaurant where their first date.
Yeah.
And
that Louis Callahern is a very good-looking man.
yes, he is.
He's very good looking.
But there's such ease between him and Ingrid Bergman, and you almost kind of wish, Claude, can't you just flip sides?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
who needs the Nazis? You're on the wrong side of history here,
Yeah.
Alex Sebastian.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
And
the famous scene, of course, when he goes to his mother, but there's the part before too that I absolutely love is when he catches Cary Grant.
Wine Cellar, which gives
and
our
then
its title, yes.
Oh, but it's so simple the way he does it. And he says, sorry to intrude on this tender scene. But he stays so still, yet you could write a novel on everything that man is thinking and feeling at that moment.
Absolutely. And he never quite believes that she could love him. And when it's proven right, it's like it's all his worst fears about himself. It's almost like he gives up, or at least puts things in Mother's hands.
And the fact that Mother's right. I love the conversation between him and his mother.
She will have to go, Alex.
Yes.
But slowly.
She's great. She's great.
But
The way she lights her cigarette.
But when they're arguing about her, when she said, I'm sorry if we don't have to sit around like two grinning idiots. And Alex is complaining that the mother's not nice to Alicia.
Is there a Hitchcock film where the villain is given as much life as Alex is in Notorious? I don't think so.
I don't think
Probably
so.
not.
I don't think so.
And
or is as likable.
Right. And as you say, you had an actor up to the challenge. I mean, who's better?
Yeah.
I mean, the only person who I can think of who, comes close in our modern era is Philip Seymour Hoffman, someone who could do little bit parts or leads or anything in between with equal ease and believability, and was just absolutely believable in everything he did. That was Claude Rains.
With Claude Rains, even if I didn't like the movie, I generally liked him. Because like the movie that a lot of people love him in, love him and Bette Davis, is Mr. Skeffington. Yeah. And I don't like Bette Davis in it, but I love Claude Rains.
I have to think, really, I've never seen a bad Claude Rains performance, period.
I don't think I have either.
And of course you root for Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman to get together and to be together, and that the Nazis and their uranium experiments be stopped. Yeah. But oh my God, when he has to walk back into the house and face them at the end, and they lock the car door on him, and it's, he just rips the heart out.
To talk to you.
Oh my God, it's so painful.
I think of all her movies, I don't think Ingrid Bergman ever looked better.
And that's saying
she's great in it too.
She is. I think it's her best performance.
And Grant is believable too. And, you know, as someone who, as you say, Michael, is completely unable to express his love for her in the way that that Claude Rains' character can, and then, you know, finally in the end can break through to that. But it's Claude Rains' film. I mean, he carries that film in a way that no other Hitchcock villain does, except maybe, as you say, Michael, maybe Ray Milland in
but Notorious is a better movie than
most definitely. No, it's
course. And I'm the only reason
it's in my Hitchcock top 5.
Me too.
Me too.
Yeah, and for those of our fans who have not seen it yet, you know, high behance now. See it. It is perfection.
And it doesn't show that much. Even Turner Classics doesn't seem to have it.
Why? Why is that?
I don't know. It's available. You can buy it.
And I'm going to seize the moment and throw in another relatively obscure Hitchcock villain who also we get to see a little bit. And in this case, it's not about loving a woman. It's about loving his daughter. And that's Herbert Marshall in Foreign Correspondent.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because, you know, he is the head of this evil organization. They're torturing old men in mills and stuff. He's really bad news, but you know, because Marshall is such a good actor, and you know that he in the end literally sacrifices himself so that his daughter and Joel McRae's character and George Sanders and everyone else can live. He knows that another body on the floating plane wing is going to sink it, and so he surreptitiously slides off.
Right.
And you know, so again, a really bad guy doing really bad things with global implications, like Alex Sebastian in Notorious, but a redeeming characteristic in the genuine love he has for. I love that movie. It gets overlooked so easily. What do you guys think of it?
I like
it. Oh, I like it. Yeah, it's got some signature Hitchcock moments in it. The scene with the windmills, and the umbrellas.
And the plane crash at the end is pretty spectacular effect for 1940. I mean, very real, very believable, and it's got George Sanders. So how can you lose?
It does.
Scott Folio, you know, 2 small F's at the beginning. I love that.
Okay, I'm going to put in one that I know John is really going to disagree with me, and you might too, Josh. This is a bridge for George Sanders, the same year of Foreign Correspondent.
Judith Anderson.
Yeah.
Oh,
Mrs. Danvers.
Michael, who could disagree with Mrs. Danvers? Are you kidding?
Oh, well, she's completely evil. I'm not crazy about the movie, that's all.
I'm not either, but that's Olivier and Fontaine. That's not Dame Judith.
Actually, Fontaine, I think, is actually pretty good in it. And I'm not a big Fontaine fan. Olivier is not.
No.
Olivier is pretty stiff. Everyone else, I watched that again yesterday too. Everyone else in it is good. I really like the smaller parts, like Nigel Stock and Gladys Cooper as the sister and brother-in-law. But when I saw a remake of Rebecca on Masterpiece Theater with Diana Rigg, I thought, oh, Judith Anderson really was good in this movie.
Well, because we can put her in that last category because her redeeming characteristic is her love and her loyalty for Rebecca. I mean, it manifests itself in some dangerously psychotic ways, but her devotion and her love
she's obsessive.
Yeah.
I should also put in a little personal bit. I had to do her in a scene in acting class, a play called The Mystery of Irma Vep. And I had to play 2 characters. John, you weren't in class then. And one of them, it literally said in the script, a la Judith Anderson and Rebecca.
Wow.
So at the time, I didn't even have the movie, but you could rent things in those days. So I immediately rented Rebecca, and I watched her over and over and over again. And I really got her down. I literally got her voice. The thing is, and I realized with her that she never smiles unless she's talking about the first Mrs. De Winter.
The first Mrs. De Winter. Yes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, she never smiles, not even a hint of a smile. But she was one of my top 5 villains.
No, and there's genuine psychosis and obsession there, but there's some explanation for it. There's some. Although we ever really find out why she and the first Mrs. De Winter were so
Oh, I think she's a repressed lesbian.
I always thought that too. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not made explicit in the.
No, it's not.
In the Du Maurier novel or in the film, right?
No, it's not. But I suspected. I mean, come on, she
That
burns the
would make
house
sense.
down.
Yeah, that would make sense. One from the 30s, from the British period, that I always think of as sort of the template for the future Hitchcock suave, cultured villain is Godfrey Turrell in 39
39
Steps.
Steps. He's missing
Uh-huh.
one finger. You mean
Yeah.
like this? So good. Yes. Well, and that's a film we haven't gotten to talk about a lot, but and you might even throw Peter Lorre from the original Man Who Knew Too Much in there too. But Godfrey Turrell is the suave.
Yeah, he's not in it that much, but I mean, it's definitely kind of the template for the future suave cultured villains.
I think that's a really good point, John. I absolutely agree with that. He is the mold. And I'm going to throw in, the listeners know how much I love I Confess, in spite of its many flaws. Montgomery Clift being entirely made of wood is one of them.
I disagree. I think Clift is really good in it, because the whole thing about that character is that he's not allowed to express what he knows and feels. He's got to keep everything inside.
Well, and as Michael pointed out when we talked about I Confess, he even comes across as sort of leaden in the flashback scenes. But one of you, I think you both pointed it out, that flashback is subjective. It's Anne Baxter's flashback to the time before the war.
Yes.
And maybe she remembers him as a lot more open and receptive, and human than he was when he came back and after the war and decided to join the priesthood. But the villain in I Confess is one of the most interesting villains. In a sense, he's among the most evil, because he commits an act of murder for money. The priest, Montgomery Clift, is blamed for it because he was wearing a priest's cassock when he committed the crime. And, for those who don't know the film, he confesses the murder to Father Michael, to Montgomery Clift. And then when Father Michael becomes a suspect, he can't say the truth because of the sanctity of the confession. And you keep waiting for Keller, for O.E. Hassa, the character, to break. And he does. And as you were saying before the film, but yes, there's a certain kind of patheticness about him. I was a poor immigrant. We were poor immigrants, and you took us in. And my wife Alma works so hard, played by the wonderful Dolly Haas in the film.
Oh yeah, she's excellent in it.
And rather than, so he's willing to let Father Logan die, and then rather than having her reveal the truth because she's so horrified that he's going to let this happen, he shoots her in public and runs into the Chateau Frontenac. I mean, come on. But a fascinating character. And I mentioned when I was talking about I Confess in episode 5 that in the original play that it's based on are Two Consciences. I don't know what the wife's name is, but Hitchcock changed the name to Alma, his own wife's name.
Oh, okay.
And that, and all those lines about my Alma, she worked so hard, take on a kind of a very personal feeling. But, Keller, the name of the character that Hassa plays, doesn't show up much, but in some senses, he's a really interesting villain. And
definitely.
He clearly has a conscience because he goes right to confessional. Yeah. And yet, not enough of a conscience or he's too much of a coward to not let Father Logan be hung at the gallows for a crime he didn't commit, knowing full well that Father Logan will not reveal the truth. So, another reason to watch I Confess is that great performance.
See, and that movie's around a lot. I think Turner has it on all the time.
Let's talk for a moment about the villains who don't show up much but are important. Let's talk, and of course we got to begin with
Otto Kruger and Saboteur.
Yes, amazing. He's talk about your suave, evil guy, just like Herbert Marshall and Alex Sebastian and Van Damme and in North by Northwest, and Godfrey Turrell in 39 Steps. Yeah, absolutely. Saboteur. This Cummings is not good, but boy, is that an underrated film. All right,
I don't mind him in Saboteur.
No, he's actually quite. I don't love Priscilla Lane in the film. I do like Norman Lloyd though as Fry.
Yes.
Yeah, he's good.
who's still with us at 105.
Is he's still alive? Wow.
He's still alive. He works occasionally.
That's amazing.
I think he holds the Guinness Book of Records as the oldest working actor.
Wow. That's totally, I mean, and you know, that scene on top of the Statue of Liberty is, you know, when his sleeve starts to rip. He's, I'll clear you. God, I love that
But
movie.
remember, there were years that he didn't act at all. He was Hitchcock's producer on the show.
And then shows up in St. Elsewhere, and then as
St. Elsewhere, and he does movies.
The headmaster in Dead Poets Society.
Yeah, Age of Innocence.
Yeah.
The scene I always think of, though, with Otto Kruger and Saboteur is that moment with the child. And for a moment, you think he's a really good guy that might help him, and then you realize, he's the villain.
The child's a prop.
If he had to, he would eat that child for lunch.
Okay, now here's a question that I had in my honorable mention, if you would consider this woman a villainess. It's in a very bad Hitchcock movie. Anna Paradis.
I'm not going to do my Louis Jordan imitation again.
No, you don't have to.
Let me tell you about Mrs. Paradis. She's bad to the bone.
But she is bad.
Yeah, but Vallee is sort of. I love her in The Third Man. But
well, of course, The Third Man's a great movie.
She really is a third-rate Ingrid Bergman. She really is.
Okay, but as far as the way it's written, though,
I've only seen Paradine Case once or twice. I really have to go back to it, because she's so brilliant in Third Man. I just saw Third Man a few weeks ago, and like, wow, she's really believable. Well, you know, we've been dancing around Gavin Elster here. And
I was just gonna say, and I you know, the thing about Tom Helmore in that, he's not in it very much, but
very little.
The thing that I really, really admire the way he did it is that he comes off so sincere. You completely believe everything he says.
I mean, Scotty is not stupid. Scotty sees people, I mean, you know, and he absolutely, and of course he gets one look at Kim Novak and decides, yeah, I'll take the case, but at Ernie's. But yeah, I mean, it's totally, the whole thing, I mean, it's so implausible, you know. Yeah, I know, I don't believe it either that she's possessed by the spirit of Carlotta Valdez, but, you know, she'll go off somewhere. And those speeches that he has are just, what else is Tom Helmore in? I've never remembered seeing him.
He's about North by Northwest, I think, for like 2 seconds.
Yeah, he's one of the guys at the table in the plaza. Yeah. But
he's an advise and consent. He shows up in small parts.
But I don't know if he's in the movie enough to qualify on our list of top Hitchcock baddies, but boy.
No, but he's certainly important in Vertigo, that's for sure.
Actually, if you want to say somebody's a baddie in Vertigo, Henry Jones. I mean, he's just loathsome.
He's leading the little inquest there,
but he's kind of loathsome the way he does it. I mean,
yeah,
which he neglected to do. Exactly. All right, here's my question, though. I know how you guys feel about the film, but are you going to give me Barry Foster in Frenzy?
It's funny. I was Stanley Kaufman in his review of Frenzy, and in the book I have a Stanley Kaufman's reviews. He says you can always tell how good a Hitchcock movie is by the villain. In this case, Barry Foster is a middling villain, and Frenzy is a middling movie. And I kind of agree.
You know, it's funny, and we've said this before, but I think if Hitchcock had used more restraint in the film and not being so graphic in the violence, I think it would have actually been better. I think it would have.
You might be right.
Better.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. And part of that was like, I think Hitchcock saying, well, you know, I can do it too. Because that's when movies were becoming much realer, more graphic.
Because you had the rating system.
Both sexually and with violence. Everything was a stress on realism.
This is his only R-rated movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and deservedly so. It's brutal.
It's brutal. The only thing, I mentioned this in a previous episode, the only thing I like about Frenzy, really, is the scenes with Alec McGowan and Vivian Marchand.
Yeah, that one.
But what's really interesting is that the hero, the putative hero of the film, you know, John Finch's character, is actually less likable than the villain.
Yeah, well, that happens a lot in Hitchcock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And you know, Rusk is totally charming. I mean, you know, he's got that whole world of the green market. He's kind of got it under his thumb, and everybody knows him, and he's Bob's your uncle, and everyone. You completely believe that he would have enough camouflage to get away with the horrors that he's getting away with. So I know Fred. There's not much to love in Frenzy, although I think, except those Alec McGowan, Vivian Merchant scenes. But I think Barry Foster might qualify on my list. I mean, I don't even know who to talk about when we were talking '60s Hitchcock. You know, Torn Curtain and Topaz aren't even worth mentioning. But
No.
as an exit question to this part, Norman Bates.
Now let's remember there might be 2 or 3 people out there who have never seen Psycho. So
Too bad. This is not for them then.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. All right, turn off your podcast right now.
Turn off if you
on-
haven't seen Psycho, but I know everybody who's listened to this.
And it's available on iTunes, Spotify, and SoundCloud for those of you.
Well, you
listening
could say that Norman is not a villain, but Mother is.
Yes.
At least in Norman's mind, anyway. I mean, we
My
only see
mind.
Norman's mother once, and she's lost a few pounds at the end there. But I mean, people who don't think about it just, oh yeah, Norman Bates, Psycho Killer, sure, one of the classics. But I can't. Maybe it's just that Perkins is so good. I cannot see Norman as a villain.
No, I don't either.
No, he's dangerous. He's
nuts.
He's a highly disturbed person, but
It seems,
yeah, you can't really call him a villain.
right. And if we
He
believe
doesn't do what he does for personal gain.
right,
There's no
or political gain, or
yeah.
And if we're to believe the stories of, you know, that the sheriff tells, and you know, all the things we hear, that he certainly came by his psychosis honestly.
Yeah.
So I think Psycho, I agree with you guys. I think Psycho is a movie without a villain, possibly the late Mrs. Bates, but you know, we don't know. Those are just stories.
Yeah.
Did you guys watch the series with Vera Farmiga?
No.
Bates Motel. It was supposed to be really good. I have to
Was
catch
it?
up on it. Yeah, I know.
I remember seeing Psycho 2, 3, and 4 with Perkins, and that was enough.
That was
Psycho for me.
All right. What about Jessica Tandy as
In the Birds?
the bad
In the
guy?
Birds, the villain?
No.
No, I don't see her as a villain. I see her as someone who's afraid.
I mean, if you want to get philosophical about it, especially in the age of climate change, we're all the villains. Because, you know, part of the message of the Birds is that we have this arrogance that, you know, or what we're going through right now with the quarantine, that we have this arrogance that we can dominate nature, and every once in a while nature rises up and bites us in the ass, taps us on the shoulder and says, you're only in charge until you're not. And now we are humbled at the feet of nature. And, you know, that's why I love the fact that the bird attacks are completely unexplained. That is my favorite.
Well, they tend to happen when there's some sort of unresolved issue between people, or some sort of chaos between people. I don't think you can see them as metaphorical.
Right. If they're metaphorical,
if you see them that way, they're not completely, insane kind of thing.
If they're metaphors for a lack of emotional connection, which you know, in our favorite Hitchcock moments, number 3 for me was when they get in the car at the end and she grabs Tippi Hedren by the shoulder and gives her this warm smile. Our first moment of real emotional connection in the film. But she's the one who stops Mitch from, connecting with anyone, at least according to Suzanne Pleshette, anyway.
Yeah.
Annie.
Well, there is that moment when. After the Jessica Tandy character has gone to go see the other chicken farmer.
Oh my God.
Finds him. And when she comes back and she's extremely upset and she's in bed and Tippi Hedren serves her tea and they have that conversation. There's a connection there. I mean,
she says, thanks for the tea, Melanie.
Yeah,
right.
No, but she reveals, some things about herself, and Melanie begins to sort of understand more about her.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I don't see I don't see her as the villain. I see us as the villain, and our arrogance.
But here, right after the birds, Marnie. Now, do you
Villain?
see Diane Baker as a
Not,
villainess?
not the mother.
Not the mother. The mother is
I mean,
screwed
she's
up.
a great performance, but
Yeah,
no,
but
and
she's screwed up. But she's not a villainess. She's screwed up.
yeah, but then after the screw up and Marnie kills, spoiler alert, Marnie kills the sailor, she spends the rest of Marnie's childhood not loving Marnie. I mean,
But
Marnie's,
I think because she's just so nuts. Because at the very end,
you're the only thing I ever did, love. Yeah.
yeah. But on the other hand, the Diane
Hurt
Baker
my leg, Barney.
is
Marnie.
is purely villainous.
I don't know.
I happen to really like her in it.
I do too. Oh, I
I
think
like
she's
her more
excellent.
than a Tippi Hedren.
I think she's excellent in it.
Yeah.
But his mark is Sean Connery, you know, because he forces himself upon her after their wedding, and that's a fairly villainous moment.
Yeah, there's the suggestion that he rapes her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's more than a suggest. That look in her
Well,
eyes.
I didn't want to say okay for sure, but
Whoa. Yeah,
Me too.
I think Marnie is too complicated to point at a
Okay.
bad guy. But yeah, I mean, everyone's got. I mean, you know, Marnie herself is a thief. I mean, she and a serial thief. But she but comes by it honestly, as we've said. Yeah, no, I Marnie is starting to really get its due. You know, it's not.
It should. I think it's a very underrated movie.
I totally agree, and you know, of course, you know, we've mentioned, we talked about our favorite books, Donald Spoto's The Art of Alfred Hitchcock. You know, before all the stuff came out about Tippi Hedren rejecting his advances, he tries to make this whole argument that the crappy sets and the crappy rear projection were, you know, Hitchcock's attempt to be expressionistic. No, they were his attempts to sabotage the film after she rejected him. And he admits that later on in The Dark Side of Genius, which is an even better book, I think. But yeah, I agree with you, Michael. I think Marnie is deservedly for 1964, very sophisticated in its approach.
Oh yeah, I like the movie a lot. It's beautiful looking. I love the use of color in that movie.
Yep.
I love Bernard Herrmann's score.
Oh my God. Well, I mean,
I think that's one of his top.
And
that's saying something.
Okay,
the Sean Connery character is not exactly completely sane either.
No, she said that to him. She said, you know what, you've trapped something, you've trapped a wild animal, and now you want to study it. I mean, yeah, Mark is just as messed up as everybody else in the film. Except Martin Gable. We love Struck.
Who I still think looks like our current Pope.
Only Michael would make the connection between His Holiness and Martin Gable.
I don't see that at all.
You've never seen them together? I think they look very similar.
That's true.
I think he's his unkind younger brother.
That could work. Yeah, we'll make that work. All right, so there you have it, Vintage Sand fans. Our discussion, not a ranking because it's not something that really needs to be ranked. And but the villains, maybe they don't define the film as well as clearly as they do say in something a little simpler psychologically, like the Bond films. But you know, a good villain can be like Alex Sebastian, like Bruno Antony, like Tony Wendis. Can, you know, I mean, Ray Milland might get our top award because he's got the weakest material to work with.
That's a good point.
And Dial M is watchable strictly because of him, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
I would agree with that.
We're just like the governors of Texas and Florida. We're opening up a little early. We're bringing back the necrology because we lost a couple of major figures in the last the last few weeks. Let's talk about Joel Schumacher for a moment. Thoughts, gentlemen? I'm a fan. I'm a big fan, actually.
Are you?
And I'll tell you why. There was one run, I think, from between, say, Lost Boys, which was 87.
I do like Lost Boys.
And I loved the original Flatliners. I thought was great. Big misstep with dying young Julia Roberts and Campbell Scott.
God.
Ooh, boy, that's bad.
Awful. But then The Client, with Susan Sarandon, and
I
he
wasn't wild about that one either.
did an even better job on the other Grisham, A Time to Kill, the one with Samuel Jackson and Matthew McConaughey. I think that's great. And the film that is forgotten, and I have no idea why. I mean, very controversial at the time, and to me, it is a fascinating study. And one of my favorite Michael Douglas performances is Falling Down.
I don't like Falling Down. That movie irritated the hell out of me.
Jono, you want to chime in on this?
But I don't know. I think Schumacher, I think most of his movies, to me, it's kind of by the numbers.
Well, but he's a designer. I mean, he started his career as a designer, and he's very much into the look of his. I mean, the look of, say, occasionally he's got a script like Lost Boys where he puts it all together.
Lost Boys, I enjoyed.
Lost Boys, I like a lot. Actually, I think I mean, yeah, it has humor, and it's. I remember the first time I saw it, it just seemed so different from the usual sort of vampire horror movie. It's like going in a completely different direction.
No, and
it's almost a comedy.
And I've got to say that of the Grisham film adaptations, The Time to Kill is my favorite one. And I have no great love for Matthew McConaughey as an actor, but, Samuel Jackson, I hope they died. I hope they burn in hell. There's so many good moments in that film. Yeah, he was like, he was a Michael Curtiz. He was a really good studio craftsman who once in a while rose above the material. Like with Lost Boys, I think. Check out Flatline. Have you seen Flatliners recently?
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it in a very long time.
I saw it when it came out. I was not a big fan.
It was very stylish as well. Even the Val Kilmer Batman film, which everyone forgets. Everyone's like, "Oh, Joel Schumacher killed the Batman franchise."
I mean, the movies they're slick.
Yes, deliberately so. They're entertainment. He was not an auteur. He was not aiming for art. So, but he did kill the Batman franchise. Batman and Robin is one of maybe the worst superhero movie ever made, and that's
now is that the one with George Clooney?
Yep, and the nipples on the bat suit. That's all you gotta hear.
I didn't see it, but I've heard Clooney talk about it in interviews.
Yeah, at least he has a sense of humor about it. He's like, "Yep, I killed the Batman franchise all by myself." So, but there is a lot in Schumacher's career. He made entertaining movies. Not a great beginning of his career, not a great ending, but there again, from 87 Lost Boys through about 93, 94, and I think Falling Down is something worth watching.
I remember one little bit in that movie where Michael Douglas is yelling at some road construction workers. And he starts yelling, "You're just here just to get paid, aren't you?" And the guy looks at that and goes, "Yes, I don't think that would ever happen." I saw that scene, that line, and I thought, no way would these workers tell him that ever.
Well, and we think it's one thing. We think it's this, white defense contractor who's who's divorced, and I think Barbara Hershey, who plays the ex-wife, is very good in it. And
isn't Tuesday Weld in it too?
Tuesday Weld was right, and the other story is Robert Duvall. It's his last, the cliche. It's his last week on the job as a cop, and the stories are separate, but in the end, they come together on the Santa Monica Pier. And that scene with Douglas and Duvall, I think, is fantastic. That look on Michael Douglas's face when he sees the cops and he looks, "Wait, I'm the bad guy here? I did everything they told me. I went to school. I went to work for the government. I made, things that defended America. How did I end up being the bad guy?" And Duvall says, "Listen, you're not special. The only thing that makes you special is that little girl over there." And the whole thing is when he's in the Army-Navy shop in the middle of the film pivots. You think it's going to be like this sort of racist fantasy. And then the Army-Navy shop guy's like, "I'm with you, I'm one of you," like the neo-Nazi. And Michael Douglas is like, "I'm not like you. You're disgusting." And the film goes somewhere else completely.
Yeah. I guess I need to see it again, maybe.
Yeah, it's worth a look. It is sort of captures where we were back in 1993 in the wake of, say, Rodney King and all those other issues. Some words about Sir Ian Holm, gentlemen.
One of my favorites.
Great actor.
Great actor. And the other night I was watching, which I hadn't seen in 40 years, Chariots of Fire, which is his only Oscar nomination.
Right, it's the coach.
Yep.
I remember that.
And I realized that he's the only person I remember in the whole film. because I found that film frankly kind of forgettable.
Oh, I mean, I
Yeah.
hate masterpiece theater films, but you know, Ben Cross, Ian Charleston.
Well, they were good actors, but they played. Frankly, it was a movie about two English drips. They just weren't that interesting of a character.
Should it be?
I frankly didn't care if they won or not.
Well, I remember first seeing Ian Holm as Ash, as the android in Alien, and you know that was a fabulous performance. I mean,
Yeah.
completely.
No, he was always good.
And little piece of trivia: for almost 15 years, he didn't do any stage work because he said he suffered from unanswerable stage fright.
Interesting.
Just didn't want to go and do any plays. And he was on a talk show, and I forget who was interviewing him, and said, what will it take for you to return to the theater? And he goes, well, if Harold Pinter writes me a part. And Harold Pinter did.
He started out with Pinter, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The Homecoming.
Right.
Have you ever seen the movie of that?
I have
Yes.
not.
Oh,
Yes.
I have it. It's wonderful. It's
it's
for
good.
the original 6 original actors, and it's Sir Peter Hall. It's one of the best film plays I've ever seen. And Ian Holm is great. But here, Pinter wrote him apart, and he sure is enough his word. It was called Moonlighting, and which I saw in London, and Ian Holm was great. And then he did Lear.
And I love him as Llewellyn in the Brannick Henry V. He's wonderful in that part. And I also like him as Polonius in the Zeffirelli Mel Gibson Hamlet. I don't love that film.
Oh, I hate it.
It's kind of an interesting take on, you know, a more physical Hamlet than you'll usually see. But again, he was the dad in Garden State, remember? He was Zach Braff's dad.
Yes.
And one of his few leading roles in movies, Adam O'Goyan's Sweet Hereafter.
Sweet Hereafter. He's sweet.
Guys,
Really, really, really good movie. He's great in it.
My God, can you explain to me why that movie has disappeared?
I haven't.
I don't know.
So devastated by that.
Adam O'Goyan's films in general have disappeared.
I will never. I remember seeing that movie. That moment when the bus goes out on the lake.
Oh my God.
It's still so vivid in my head. It's as if I just watched the movie.
Yeah, that was a great movie.
And, you know, we were talking about Claude Rains and Philip Seymour Hoffman before. Holm was another person who could play a lead, someone who shows up on screen for 10 minutes like Llewellyn in Henry V, or anywhere in between, and be utterly and completely believable in anything he did.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, when he was, I'm not a fan of Peter Jackson's, Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit films. He was up there as the older Bilbo, but you know, he can do anything.
The next time I see you, Josh, I'm going to lend you my copy of The Homecoming.
I'm a Pinter fan,
because
so I definitely want to see that.
It's just brilliantly done.
And the last to mention is the great and unfortunately almost completely forgotten screenwriter Louis John Carlino.
Yeah, he just died a couple days ago at 88. And I looked up his credits, seconds.
Oh, and we listen to episode 2 when we're talking about Frankenheimer and those early 60s black and white. You guys will know how much I love that movie.
He wrote The Brotherhood, The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea, and that he also directed. I Never Promised You a Rose Garden, which is his only Oscar nomination.
Really?
The Great Santini, which he also directed.
Brilliant screenplay from...
And Resurrection.
Resurrection. That's another film.
Another movie, yeah.
We were talking about this before we came on. That is absolutely inexplicable why that movie has been forgotten.
I wonder if you can even rent it or get it anywhere.
It's Ellen Burstyn, my favorite Ellen Burstyn performance, which is saying something about a woman
She's great. Sam Shepard's great in it, the evil little galleon.
Yep, who has healing powers. And it's about, she's got healing powers.
Yeah.
And she is able to, doesn't she have an accident or something? And she comes back from the edge, from the brink of death.
Yeah, her husband dies in it.
Right, and she has these powers of healing, and it's not necessary, it's about how this impacts her psychologically.
Right, and also how Christians fight her on it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, the Sam Shepard character is
okay, so that's our.
But I remember when that movie was playing when it first came out, and it had been around for a little while, and I finally saw it with a friend. And afterwards, I just kept thinking to myself, why are more people going to go see this? This is so good.
Yep.
Yet at the same time, it's like, who thought of this movie? Where did it come from? It
Right.
was so unusual.
Who gave
It
that
was a hard
credit?
movie to market.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yes. I
And
think that's probably part of the problem.
And so Michael, Resurrection was his last credit?
I think he did a couple of other things that television that I wasn't that
We never
familiar
wrote
with.
another film after that. That's really interesting.
I have the brother, I have the Fox. I just wrote down a whole
Was that
bunch.
Ray Milland calling before?
What?
Yep. I put all the scissors away, so it shouldn't be any problem. But this is all impromptu, nothing planned. But so that's our recommendation from this. If you can track it down from 1980, Resurrection with Ellen Burstyn is just. I've never seen another film quite like it. And
Exactly. Yeah, it's a very unique movie.
Very unique movie. All right. And so that about does it, fellas. That about wraps up episode 22, our long-threatened approach to villainy and Hitchcock. And our next, we're going to do a two-parter, I think, next.
I think, it's going to have to be 2 parts.
To move with the times. And, we're going to figure out a way to talk as best we can, given the fact that we are 3 middle-aged white men, about the portrayal of race in Hollywood, both from the perspective of filmmakers not of color, and hopefully, and maybe in the second episode, open your eyes and minds to some filmmakers of color, pre-Spike Lee, pre-blaxploitation, that are worth our attention. But we cannot let this moment go by.
Well, I think what we'll do is talk about the fact that especially earlier movies, so many earlier movies were racist in their use of stereotypes across the board. I mean,
just reflectively.
People, African Americans, Asians, Latins, it was pretty much everybody. But then also films that tried to deal with racism as a subject.
Yeah, and not always, not until you get
not always successfully. There are some movies that may have been groundbreaking when they came out, but haven't aged well at all.
As a Jewish person, I can say Gentleman's Agreement, Oscar Best Picture, is top of that list, because who wouldn't believe Gregory Peck is a Jewish person?
I can't watch more than 15 minutes of that movie.
There we go. And, I think we'll open one of those episodes by addressing, sharing I don't want to do it now, but talking about the Gone with the Wind HBO Max controversy. Because
you heard it's coming back. They're bringing it back.
Right, with context.
Isn't the whole idea that they were never going to just take it off completely, never bring it back, but they were going to put some sort of preface on it?
They're having the woman who does the silent movies on TCM.
Okay, yeah.
And again, it would be nice if we could talk about the history of film without Birth of a Nation, but we can't.
We're going to have to talk about it.
It's disgusting. I mean, there's no other word for it. But on the other hand, it is,
it's a landmark film as far as the language of film is concerned.
Exactly. So we will try to sort that all out and, recognize our, that our perspective, is a difficult one to approach this topic from in a way that has full vision, but we can't let the moment go. We have to, and hopefully we will expose you to filmmakers like Oscar Micheaux and Spencer Williams and some of the early, what they call the Chitlin Circuit African-American filmmakers, because Black directors and casts and writers have been making films since D.W. Griffith. It's just they weren't known, and only now are they starting to get their due. So we will try to figure out a way to approach what has become the central issue of American culture these days. So I'm looking forward to opening my own eyes and maybe opening some of our audience's ears about that. Any other thoughts on this episode, guys, or any last comments?
I'm gonna watch Notorious and North by Northwest again because of the great villains in them, and I just watched them again recently.
Absolutely. Why not? Listen, there's a reason this is our, out of 22 episodes, this is our third Hitchcock episode. Not for nothing, as we say in Staten Island. So
Right.
I will assert as ever that Vintage Sand is a 5 9s and a 4 production. We want to thank Melissa Cabot for her technical assistance, especially in recently getting us on Spotify. Which we are, and also on Apple Podcasts / iTunes and SoundCloud as well. We want to thank Mama Sue for the space. We want to thank and the internet for the space, because we're doing it on Zoom, of course. Gabby for our awesome logo. Please check out our website, www.vintagesand.com. So happy watching. Wash your hands, please, everybody. Stay the F indoors. And hopefully indoors, your favorite movies will always be streaming.